welcome to MentorMeet Stories, where we find out more about the coaches and mentors on our platform. Today, we're delighted to introduce financial coach Carolyn Millward. In 2025, Carolyn made a career transition from a 20-year career as a chartered accountant. She's interestingly combined her background in finance and her interest in a holistic approach to develop a holistic financial coaching offer that combines mindfulness practices with financial education and literacy. She helps clients understand their mindset around money and supports them to create personalized financial plans from a place of choice and empowerment. We're delighted to welcome Carolyn and dive into her unique approach to financial coaching. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Jill, and I'm really happy to be here to share my offering today, and it's great to be with you.
It's lovely to have you here. Thank you for taking the time. So let's start with what holistic financial coaching is.
That's a great question, Jill. And really, holistic financial coaching is taking a look at the person as a whole, because our finances impact everything that we do every day, and we are impacted by finances every day. So if we take it just in isolation, we see that money can really start to rule our lives. But if we start to look at the relationship that we have with money, that we've developed over time, we see that there's so much more to your personal finances than just the numbers. And we discover that actually the choices that we make around our finances are not so much about the math, but more about the emotions that we attach to finances. And those emotions grow from our money story, which is developed from as young as less than 10 years old. So all the things that we learn through our life around money and finance, it starts from a very young age, and it influences us all through our lives, right up to our current age. And so the first thing we do is look at what is that money story for each person, and how is that impacting them? And it can be negative or positive. So how is it impacting them today, and helping or hindering them with managing their money effectively in a way that gives them control, so that they can use money as a tool to get the life that they really want, instead of being a slave to money.
So what was it that led you to this and made you feel that this work is important?
Yeah, it's a long story that I'll try to make short. So, as you mentioned in the introduction, I've been in finance, in corporate finance, in CFO roles for many years, and I decided I wanted to step away from the corporate world, but I didn't want to lose the knowledge and understanding that I've gained over my career. I didn't want to waste that, so I wanted to see how I could use that and combine that also with my coaching skills. And I'm a yoga teacher, so I have the kind of yoga practice and the spiritual development. And I wanted to see how I could combine that into an offering that would probably make people more comfortable around talking about money. So I have the skill set, the background in terms of, an official qualification as a chartered accountant. So I understand money, I understand structure, discipline, control. But those are all words that people find difficult. It puts a wall up when you start to talk about finance from that lens. So my thinking was how to make it easier and more accessible and less anxiety provoking for people. So create a way of talking about money that makes it more comfortable, and yet at the same time you are getting the outcomes. So you are bringing in the structure and the discipline and the control, but in a way that feels accessible and comfortable for you. And so I guess what brought me to this point was stepping away from my career, I was reminded of a financial coach that I had met probably during COVID when I was the executive sponsor for our company's health and well-being program. And I had brought this financial coach in to talk to our staff about financial well-being be because they say that when your staff get a salary increase, the impact of that salary increase will only last about 2 months, maximum 6 months. And then they'll already be thinking of what is the next, how can I earn more? How can I get my next increase? So the company is doing a really good thing by giving that increase, but unfortunately, it doesn't last the whole year until the next increase comes about. So our thought process in the wellness committee was, how do we help people to manage their money better and to think about how they can manage their money better so that the impact of their increase can be kind of amplified, I guess. And that's when we brought in this financial coach, and she's got from a similar background to me. And that got me thinking back then was that is a direction I could take one day when I want to step away from my corporate career or when I want to work part-time. And I had already done a few years prior to that, I'd already done a coaching program, a coaching certification. And so I always wanted to coach, but I thought I would do career coaching. But then it just made sense to me to combine my financial career with my coaching and develop something that would really impact people and be helpful, and get people to feel more relaxed about money.
Mm-hmm. So when you brought that coach into your company, what was the impact?
Well, she just did a 1 hour seminar online because at that stage it was COVID, so there was no in person. But we had a really good turnout of people listening to that podcast or to the seminar.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that I communicated with afterwards said they thought of things that they'd never thought of before, and they felt that if they just focused on a few of the small items, because people always think when they think about their personal financial health, they think about wealth, they think about how much they should have. Whereas if you just focus on the present and what you can do now to get some kind of control and what you need to be looking at, knowing what you should be looking at monthly or quarterly or annually, that was really helpful for them.
That's really interesting because I can see how people are always striving for the future or thinking, when I get to this, then I'll be able to do this.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're saying is like reframing it and saying, where are you now? And you have choices to do a lot of things with where you are now if you manage things in a different way.
That's correct. And, it's the way you live every moment of your day that becomes the way you live your life. And so if you apply that to finance, it's the way you deal with your finances on a daily basis is what your finances will be like in the end. And so if that's filled with fear and anxiety and putting your head in the sand like an ostrich, you'll never get to where you want to be, but it's what you want. It's there in the back of your mind. I want this, I want this. But you're not getting there because the way you're coming at money is maybe not in such a positive or constructive way.
Mm-hmm. And from your own personal experience, is this something that you also experienced yourself?
Yes, actually, and it's interesting because as a professional finance person, sometimes we don't like to admit that we don't know everything about finance. But my field of finance was very operational corporate finance. I wasn't involved in banking or investment sector, or so I knew very little about investing, and it was a part of my financial background that I almost felt embarrassed to admit that I didn't know about it. And also when I was raising children and I had a full-time career and I was moving countries, I didn't want to be bothered by making those decisions. I had decision fatigue because I was making decisions for everybody, for the family, at work. And so I wanted somebody else to manage my money. And I did that. I handed that over to a financial advisor that I was working with, and I started to save what I could, because also as a single breadwinner, so um, looking after a family and providing for a family, not much was left.
Yeah.
And so I think that the experience, my personal experience, was that if I just, when I was younger, if I just
Mm-hmm.
really created a plan for myself, it would have been better. What I always did was made sure I was saving in some way, but I probably could have done that better too. And so based on that, I want people to know that it's number one, it's okay not to know. And number two, it's not, finance is not that difficult. We make it seem more difficult, and
Mm-hmm.
especially for people who don't like numbers,
Mm-hmm.
it can seem even more daunting and scary. But when my goal is to simplify as much as I can to help people so that it takes that hesitance and that resistance away.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think definitely my experiences have helped me to understand what I need to include in the program to help people along.
Mm-hmm. So in that way, can you explain how the two disciplines, the mindfulness and the financial side, work together?
Yes, that's a good question. And um, in the first part of my work with my clients, I look at mindset. A daily gratitude practice is very important when it comes to mindfulness, and also when it comes to changing the way you think about money. If you
Mhm.
just spend a few minutes every morning or every evening before you go to bed, just jotting down the things that you're grateful for, and specifically those things that relate to your money. There's always something to be grateful for, even if you're not a top income earner or you don't have a huge amount of resources available. You know, having a roof over your head, having a meal to eat, having clothes, those are all things that money buys. And so those are things you can remind yourself to be grateful for. And once you start to bring that gratitude practice in, it opens up your mindset, and you, instead of being in a contracted mindset, you're more in an expansive state. And from that, it's much easier to face the things that are difficult. So the mindfulness, the holistic part of it is really looking at the person, their money story, how we can stay grounded and open so that once we start to move into the the topics that typically bring anxiety or
Yeah.
fear or shame even, then
Mhm.
we have those practices to call on. Um,
Yeah, that's very clear. So, give us some examples of the kind of myths or the beliefs that people can come in with around money, sort of things that you see frequently or
yeah, there's so many. I mean, I think the first one that always comes to mind is people say, "Oh, I'm terrible with numbers, so I couldn't possibly be good at finance." I think that's the first and most common one.
yeah.
Um, and related to that is, I don't know how to use a spreadsheet.
Hmm.
Um, and then a lot of women in midlife feel that, because I coach mainly women, but a lot of people feel like they've left it too late.
Yeah.
So they get to a certain point in their life and they think, oh, I should have started when I was 20. So I'm just not, it's too late for me now. I might as well just not even think about it. And I think the other thing is shame, where people feel that because they haven't done anything, especially if they are single parents or single breadwinners, they feel responsible. And if they haven't saved well,
Mm.
or if they haven't looked at their finances in the past, they have a sense of shame that they should have done it, that it was their responsibility. And so that's one of the things we work with, is to try and remove that shame and say it's okay. We still have time. There's still things you can do. But yeah, I think those would be my top three things that I see all the time. And then the last one would be, I don't know anything about finance. I don't know enough. I don't have the skills. I don't have the knowledge. We live in a world where knowledge is so readily available. And so I always encourage people to read, to listen to podcasts. There's so many amazing resources out there that people can use. But having said that, even when you read and you listen, it can still be confusing to sort out the wood from the trees. You know, you can listen to so many different opinions and just get yourself more confused.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Can you give us an example, or maybe a sort of scenario of where somebody's come in feeling sort of out of control and helpless, and how you've helped them to sort of reframe and the results?
Yes, I can definitely give you a good example. I have two great examples. One is a young woman of 30, about 32, and she has her own business, and she has successfully run her business for the last 5 years. But there was definitely an overlap between her business and her personal finances. There was no separation of the two. And also, she had only been thinking for the present moment. She hadn't really been thinking about her future and what she needs to provide, and how she can get to her financial goals. And she describes herself as chaotic. She says she knows that she has a lot of chaos in her finances. And she also had the added complication of having lived in multiple countries and having her business set up in multiple countries. And so really working with her in the first few sessions, it was beautiful to see how she started to think differently, and she would message me often during the week saying, you know, it's amazing. I'm working through one of the exercises, and things that I never thought about before are coming to light. And there's two really important decisions I need to make. And this has helped me think through those decisions. And so now she's starting to also, she's started to consolidate her businesses. She doesn't need them to be open in multiple different countries. She had multiple bank accounts, which she's now reducing as well, so that it's easier to manage. And she's looking at paying herself first. So instead of what's left at the end of the month to save, say, how much do I want to save, and put that away first before she does anything else with the money that she takes from the business for herself. And then the other example I can give you is a woman in midlife who she's at the top of her career. She's been working for many years. She's a now empty nester. And one of the things that she always found difficult was she knew how much she earned, but she didn't really know her full financial situation. She didn't know her net worth. She didn't know what she should be doing differently, if anything, because she didn't have a full picture. Again, multiple bank accounts in more than one country. And so she wanted to get clarity around her finances and see how she could do things better in order to be able to retire in about 5 years. So that was her goal, was to be able to retire comfortably. And she had a lot of anxiety around her financial situation. And she had a lot of anxiety about thinking about retiring because she didn't think that she was in a position to retire. And so the work with her was really around giving her the clarity of her current financial situation. She was surprised to see that actually she had done a lot of things well. She thought she'd done everything badly, but she'd done a lot of things well, and she
mm,
was well positioned to be able to retire in about 5 years.
mm,
And what it did was it just took the anxiety of money away from her. And it also gave her a way to have really good conversations with her husband around money,
mm,
around what they needed to discuss, decisions they needed to make. So they have implemented now every month a money power hour where they sit and they talk about money and they make decisions around the things that they need to talk about, and they know what to talk about now. So this is a really good outcome.
yeah,
And the outcome that I want my clients to have is um, that that confidence to
yeah,
speak about money in a way that's constructive.
mm, yeah, absolutely. That was the word that came to my mind when you were talking. Um, people can feel that they're not, they think that if money is like, oh, I'm not equipped to even think about money. Like I couldn't do that. That's something other people do, or it's got to such a state that I can't even look at it. And being able to sort of discuss it with you and kind of be brave enough to take away that fear and gradually switch it to feeling like you do have control or more control, or in fact that you actually might have been doing some things quite well, that you're not a complete disaster, is a way for you to move forward and then see actually sort of make informed choices from a feeling that you are capable of doing the work and having a say in it.
Absolutely. And I think that surprises a lot of people is that they didn't realize that they are capable and that they can do this.
Mm.
Um, and so giving them the tools and the framework, I hate to use those terms because they sound so corporate, but
Yeah.
it is important. And I try to phrase it a little bit differently. So one of our tools is always a budget, but in in working with a holistic approach, I call it your mindful money plan, which is a way of looking at your money that allows you to use that as a tool to get the life you want. So rather than tracking your spending every day and every month and kind of beating yourself up, oh, I shouldn't have spent on that, it really looks at your values. So we do a lot of work around values. What is really important in your life? And again, a lot of mindfulness practices, meditations, and some really good tools we use to help you take another look at your values. Our intrinsic values probably don't change much through our lives, those
Mhm.
very deep values, but
Mhm.
they might change their order of priority
Mhm.
or they might change their substance. So I take, for example, my one of my top values has always been family, but how that looked when my children were 4 years old and how it looks today when I have aging parents and grown-up children and we're spread around the world is very different to how it looked when my children were, at home and needing me.
Yeah.
So I call it recalibration of values because you're not discovering them for the first time.
Mhm.
You probably know what your values are, but you haven't really thought about them in a definite way. And so if we do these exercises to really think about what is the most important thing in my life and how do I get more of that?
Mhm.
Um, and if you look at people's spend and you look at their values, you see, do the two align?
Yeah.
So if I looked at your monthly spending, would it reflect your values? And if the answer is no, there's no shame, there's no guilt that we place. It's simply noticing it and
Mhm.
then going, okay, how do I change that? What do I want to change? What do I want to keep the same?
Mhm.
And what do I want more of? And
Yeah.
so your values, if you're living your values, if you're spending your money on your values, you're going to get more of the life you want to live. It
Mhm.
kind of sounds almost too simple, but if you're spending your money on things that are not what you value the most and not what you really want from life,
Mhm.
then you keep moving away from the life you want.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of what we do
Mhm.
what I do with my clients is really get them to review their values, recalibrate, and decide what are the little things they can do every day to make sure that their spending is more aligned with their values.
Mhm. So it sounds like you're doing something that is not complicated, but it makes a huge difference, which is bringing your clients into the present. So they're not thinking about how badly they've done in the past or what the future may be, or they're not concentrating. Then you're just saying, okay, where are we now? Where, where do you want to go? And you actually have the capability to do that. So you're kind of empowering them to take control.
Yes, and that is a lot of the work of mindfulness is being able to stay in the present and um, observe the situation objectively,
Mhm.
and move away from blame and fear and guilt and shame, and move into that more expansive state that takes you towards being in control,
Mm.
being empowered, feeling like you can do this, like you've got
Yeah.
this. So, just reframing your mindset, which is why we start with the mindset work to see what is the mindset,
Mhm.
and how do we reframe that constant nagging voice in the head that says, I'm too late, I'm not good with numbers. How do we reframe those sentences so that our voice in our head is not telling us we can't do it, but is actually
Mhm.
telling us we've got this, we can do it, and we're capable because
Mhm.
we are.
And do you have a particular client that you're aiming at, or do particular types of clients come to you, or are you open to working with anybody?
I'm open to working with anybody, but my focus is women. And initially, my focus was midlife women, but I'm finding that I'm getting younger women
Mhm.
who want to understand how to set themselves up for the future,
Yeah,
which I think is a beautiful thing because,
absolutely.
you know, a lot of us are not taught that as youngsters. When I was raised, the way I was raised as money, it's vulgar to talk about money at dinner parties, and there wasn't a lot of discussion around how to manage money, if any, actually.
Mhm.
And so I think one of my sayings is share, don't compare. So
Mhm.
there's a way to have constructive money conversations, and I think we should have them more.
Yeah.
If we're talking about how much money we have, and we're doing that in a boastful and egotistical way, then it's not nice to discuss it like that. But if we're talking about money, to share what we've done, or to share our learnings or our mistakes or our successes in a way that helps other people.
Yeah.
So, to have those constructive money conversations from young is so much better than ending up, when you're retired and not having enough. And so I love the fact that I'm getting younger women now, seeking out the help and the support to know how to move forward to create a better life and to create the life they want. And I think nowadays young people have so many options about how they can live their life. When we were young, it was, you get a job, you stick with it for years, and that's how you make your money, and just save, 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 and invest. And nowadays, there's so many different ways of living, and you can
Mhm.
be a digital nomad, and you can, work from the top of a mountain. But at the same time, those things require you to think about the future when you're no longer able to do that. And so, how do you make provision for that now without being restrictive? Because I think that's another one of the myths, is that as soon as you work with a financial coach, they're going to tell you to stop drinking coffee. And
Mhm.
we're not going to do that at all, because if coffee is one of your values, I really want you to have that lovely cup of coffee
Yeah.
every day. But
Yeah.
perhaps, something else you can give up so that you can have that coffee.
Yeah.
So it's not about being restrictive. It's about making sure that you're spending in alignment with what
Mhm.
brings you joy, and what aligns with your values, like I said earlier.
Yeah, so working out what actually is important, what matters to you, and working from
Yeah.
there. Yeah, rather than shaming yourself for spending £10 a day on coffee.
Which
Um,
in the greater scheme of things actually doesn't help, you know. It's the
no,
big things that we need to worry about, not the small cup of coffee that you have every day. It's really not going to move the needle that much.
absolutely. Tell us a little bit, as we're running out of time, about the pilot that you started. You're developing a course, is that right?
Yes, so I have an online program. It's a 12-week program. And it takes you through the whole kind of mindful money journey from starting with grounding and gratitude and mindfulness to your money mindset or your money story, how that has impacted you and your money decisions, and then reframing and using affirmations and other exercises that we do on mindfulness, moving into the more what some people may call the more scary parts of finance. So
Yeah.
starting to look at your actual current financial situation. So I take my clients back 3 to 6 months and look at their spending patterns, their saving patterns, how they're earning, if they're not salaried. And then from that, it's kind of establishing a baseline of where they're at and how they're spending, saving, and earning.
Mm.
And then getting them to identify what they want their life to look like. So I do future you meditations. I use a wheel of life exercise to say, what do you really want your life to look like? What do you want more of? And then how can we get you there through establishing your mindful money plan? So how you're going to spend, save, and earn in the future.
Yeah.
And then the last section is your wealth shield. So we look at because earning money and then keeping your money are two different skill sets. So
Mm.
once you've got your clear mindful money plan, then we look at how do you protect the money that you have earned, the money that you've saved. So we look at things like diversification of your portfolio, necessary insurances. If you have young children and people that depend on you, you might want life insurance.
Yeah.
The usual a will, estate planning. If you're a high earner or you live in a different country to your home country, you may need tax support. So looking at what SMEs you need,
Mhm.
um, and and then finishing it off, you mentioned earlier about people realizing that they've actually done things well and
Mhm.
celebrating the successes is really important at every stage of the program. Um, so the last piece is about reminding them and finding ways to celebrate. There's so
Mhm.
many different ways that we can celebrate our successes. What I don't do is I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a licensed advisor, so I don't give advice, but I do teach about the different types of investing that you could do, the options that you have, and we do an exercise about what would be most comfortable for you and the type of investing that you would want because of your approach to risk or to control, or whether you have a busy schedule or you have time. Um, so that's kind of the structure of the program. And then I have an app and everything's online. So there's little tasks that are set every day. They're very manageable, 30 minutes a day. And some days that if the task is bigger, then there will be just some days that are not assigned with any tasks for that day.
It sounds like a very practical approach that you're sort of introducing your clients to just being, taking out the fear and being more in control. And I'm sure, once, even though you say you're not a financial advisor, if you open up their minds to different ideas, then they can take that themselves and look into it and then see what fits with what they are and who they are and where they want to go with it. So it sounds very practical.
I believe it is practical, and I think you're right. I'm trying to give them the skill set and the terminology and the confidence that they can then move forward. They can go to, they can then look for themselves. They know the questions to ask. They know the terminology.
Mm,
They understand what to be careful of, what to stay away from.
yeah.
And so they can move forward and make those choices for themselves. Because a lot of the time we don't even know what questions to ask because we
Right.
don't have that background knowledge.
Yeah.
So once you have that background knowledge, you then know how to have that conversation and you don't feel like you're asking silly questions, especially
Yeah.
when you're sitting in front of more knowledgeable people.
Absolutely.
If you do decide to go to an advisor, or if you do decide to invest by yourself, at least you know what you're looking for, and you know um, you have the ability and the skill set to ask.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So, as we finish up, can I put you on the spot and ask you if you could give us a few takeaways to start our audience thinking, shifting, and thinking differently about money?
Yes, definitely. I think the first one is just a reminder that finance is not as difficult as you think it is.
Mm.
Once you break it down and you simplify it and take one step at a time, it's not that difficult. And everybody can do it. And maybe you need some support, and it's okay to ask for help. That's
Yeah.
something that I've learned through my career. As a fiercely independent person, I never wanted to ask for help, but it's okay to ask for help. That's number one. Number two, I would say know your numbers. So don't put your head in the sand. Don't be a financial ostrich. Take a breath, ground yourself, and look at your numbers. Know how much you earn. I know that sounds crazy, but if you're not a fixed salary earner, you may earn commission or you may have a business and you don't actually know how much you're taking from the business every month, or you don't know what your average salary from commission is. So know your numbers, know how much you earn, and then know how much it costs you to live.
Mm.
So a lot of people just spend, look, we have to pay this, we have to pay that. But if you ask them, how much do you live on every month? They can't answer that. So that's the next step is just know how much your essential expenses are, how much it is to keep the lights on, to keep the house running.
Wow.
Um, and then the last one is, I guess, once you know how much you earn and how much you are spending, make a plan to save and save first. So every month, automate as much as you can. So if you can automate your payments for your lights, your water, your telephone, but also automate your saving. So decide in your mindful money plan, you decide how much you want to save every month. And don't make it the last thing you do, make it the first thing you do. So put that money away. And it doesn't have to be a lot. There's a lot of percentages out there, people saying you must save 10%, you must save 20%. Well, if you're
Mm.
not in a position to do that, saving something is better than nothing. So
Mhm.
if you can save 5%, save 5%.
Mhm.
If you can save £50, save £50. Whatever it is, just put it away and do it every month and start now.
Mhm.
Um, they say that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So
Right.
start today, you know.
Oh, well, that's great advice. Thank you. And thank you so much for giving us a very clear outline of the kind of work you do. Carolyn, thanks for those three tips. As we finish up, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us before we say goodbye?
Yes, I think one of the most important things is I'm noticing that there's on social media that there's a lot of pressure for people to invest now. There's a lot of discussion around you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and people are often pushed into investing, but they don't really know what they're doing. They may get help to invest, which is good, but if you don't have your foundation before you start investing, then you can land yourself in trouble. So the foundation is you need to have your what I call your resilience reserve for emergencies. So you should have your resilience reserve saved in a high interest saving. This would be my advice because I know that a lot of people come to me that are anxious about feeling left behind when it comes to investing. And my advice is always let's look at your full situation first. What do you have in terms of assets, liabilities? Um, and then look at it. So if you're in debt, you need to work that debt down first. If you don't have a savings bucket, you need to build that savings bucket, and it may take a few months or even a year. Do that first before you throw money into investing.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is setting up, it's like almost having your safety net, so that then if the more risky things that you invest in don't go your way, if they do, amazing. But if they don't, you've still got that to fall back on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. It's been really lovely talking with you today and being on the MentorMeet platform. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So to learn more about Carolyn or to explore any of our coaches or mentors on our platform, do visit MentorMeet. From myself, Jill DeMasi, thank you so much for joining us today, and see you next time.